Hi, in this tutorial I would like to talk about how to write a discussion for a scientific publication. So the aim of the discussion is to put your results into context of literature and of what is known, and to make statements and to justify them. And I would like to start this tutorial with some statements. I propose that the structure of a scientific publication can be viewed as an hourglass. Remember from the introduction video, we come from the big question, from the broad relevance to the very small, tiny little question, which is very specific. Also the results, of course, try to answer the specific questions and are also very restricted and specific. And in the discussion, we would, of course, want to provide an answer to the specific question, but also an answer to the broad question. And if we visualize that, this would again be like a triangle but inverted. And if you look at this structure here, it looks like an hourglass. So I think it's a good idea to think of the structure of any publication in this way, from broad to specific and from specific to broad. I have a second statement here. The query principle is helpful for presenting scientific data. What do I mean with query? First, you ask a question, you present the question that you're asking, then you present the experimental approach that you're using to answer the question. Only then you present the results and you interpret them. And actually this is realized on several levels. For instance, in the results section, if you look at the respective video, we had first the question, then the approach, then the result, and then the conclusion, which is in a way from question to experiment to interpretation. Second way is in the overall structure of this of the publication. So in the introduction, you try to convince the reader that the question is good and relevant. In the results, you explain the approach and you show the data. And in the discussion, you make conclusions and interpret your data. So this query principle helps structuring scientific presentations, and I can tell you that this is what I'm doing not only for papers but also for presentations or posters. So how is such a key statement structured? So first you put a claim, a hypothesis, maybe even as a subheading where the claim is presented or the question is asked whether this is true. Then you provide all your arguments, and of course one source is your results. A second source is the literature, maybe experiments that support your view, but could also be experiments that contradict your view. And the third source are your ideas that are required to put all this into new context. At the end of such a unit of the discussion, you would repeat the conclusion, or you would conclude, and this would be something like a repetition of the claim. And then the second thing again has the same structure. First the claim, then the arguments, then the conclusion. This is really important. This is why I would like to visualize this once more. So first you have a claim, you pose a hypothesis, and then you take arguments from your work. Could for instance be result from experiment number 1, from number 4 and number 5. Then you provide literature. Some of them would already have been cited in the introduction, others you only cite in discussion here. And of course you have your ideas. And this together will make your first part of the discussion. Then you have a second hypothesis, and again you take the results, but now it's a different selection of results. For instance, number 2, 5 and 6. You have a different body of literature and you have different ideas that you contribute, and this is then the next part of the discussion, and then you add another one and so on. How to structure the discussion? In general, you would come from specific to general, like something which is still close to the results, something which answers your little question, and then towards the end something which answers the big question or contributes to that answer. Sometimes at the end you still have an outlook which kind of provides an idea of what you want to do next. You could also view it that way, that the almost certain things you put at the beginning and it gets more speculative at the end. The important point is that you focus on key statements. You know best what are the most important points that come out of your work, and you should tell them. What a discussion is not. It is definitely not just a repetition of results, and actually this is something that many people do, and it's rather poor. So let's say we have one series of experiments from 1 to 4, and if you now just duplicate these chapters and just repeat your experiments once more in the discussion and add one reference and one idea to that, this is usually a poor discussion, which is not good. You should really go beyond this structure and really think of overarching key statements that you want to make. The discussion is also not an overview of all ideas that you ever had and that ever occurred your mind while doing that project. Rather, it is your task to select the key points and to focus on those and leave the others for other discussions. You should also not lose yourself in pure speculation about things that are not really backed by your data. Just things that come out from your results, are confirmed by those or challenged by those, are important for the discussion of your paper. Again, the discussion is not the place to cite all the works that the own lab has ever published, but only those that are really relevant for this project. Summary: the aim of the discussion is to put your results into context, to make and justify key statements. And the structure is: first you have a claim, you pose a hypothesis, and then you bring arguments. And the arguments come from the literature, they come from your results, from your ideas, and at the end you conclude. Usually this will be the claim that you have here repeated. And overall, a paper has a structure of an hourglass where the discussion comes from specific to general. This is all I wanted to say about the discussion. I think the discussion really is pretty much the most difficult part of a publication, and there are really many ways of doing that. I hope that my ideas can help you in structuring your discussion. Another fun fact, this time it's about Göttingen campus and not about the university. So the Göttingen campus is a close collaboration of all research institutions in Göttingen, from university, medical faculty, Max Planck Institutes, German Primate Center, and so on. And this collaboration is both with respect to science, sharing infrastructure, and teaching. For research, this is great because you can talk to many specialists and you have access to many devices that are present at the campus. So this broadens the scope of research that you can do. And for students, it's interesting because also the experts from extra university institutions share their knowledge in teaching. And of course, lab rotations can be done not only at the university labs, but also outside, which broadens the scope of things that you might want to do. In that sense, have fun writing a discussion.